So Christmas is but almost here. Many of us are planning a trip away. Some might head offshore, but others may just travel around our beautiful country. But are you that person, no matter where you are going, near or far, you will get travel insurance? According to a survey by the Insurance Council of New Zealand, a third of Kiwis did not believe travel insurance was needed for their next overseas trip and just was not planning to get it. Eek! But bags get lost, trips get cancelled, things are stolen, and accidents happen. I must admit, when I go overseas, as I said at the beginning of the show, I do buy a travel insurance policy. But if I'm heading away on a road trip, which we are doing this year, I go, why bother? Maybe I'm being a bit naive here, a bit silly. Well, the mantra in the insurance industry is if you can't afford travel insurance, you can't afford to travel. Is that right? Karen Stevens is the Insurance and Financial Services Ombudsman, and she joins me now. Karen, a very good afternoon to you.
Hi, Leah. And Eek is right. For anybody going overseas, they really, really do need to get travel insurance.
I know. That's a big one.
It's worth going about it. If you're travelling internally around New Zealand, though, some people choose to do it. But if you have contents insurance and you have motor vehicle insurance, then you may not need it. People tend to buy domestic travel insurance more for, misconnections or flights or, anything that is not already covered by some of their other insurance cover.
So in that survey, Karen, that I talked about, that they don't believe travel insurance was necessary, do you think it's just complacency, or they seriously, or they just think it's a waste of money, or they don't quite understand, the policies?
Probably all of the above, Leah.
Yeah.
I think most of us think that the worst is never going to happen, and most of the time we're pretty good on that, and I think if you were to ask anybody who lived in Christchurch around 2010, 2011, they might have a different view.
That's true.
Equally, those people in Hawke's Bay and Auckland last year for the weather event. So I think something like that, that really happens and you need insurance, that can obviously change your mind. For a lot of people, they can get through life and they never really need it. And so therefore, if they're paying premiums, sometimes they'll say, well, what's the point? But it's mitigating your risk. It's actually managing your risk to make sure that if anything happens, you know that you're going to be covered. Now, in order to know that you're going to be covered, you need to take some basic steps. You need to read your policy. You need to understand what the cover says. And you also need to take reasonable care in terms of, what would somebody else do in the same circumstances. So you can't be really silly and take the sorts of risks that somebody thinking about it wouldn't take. So, you don't go to the beach this summer and decide to go for a swim when you're on a busy beach, loads of people around, and you leave, your wallet and your jewellery in a beach bag on the beach. You don't do that because
you won't be covered.
You won't be covered, and 9 times out of 10 it's going to be stolen. So it's taking basic precautions to make sure that you are looking after your stuff, that you're looking after you. If you get in the car knowing that yes, you've got a WAF, but unfortunately, the tyres aren't too flash and you haven't checked them for a while and you know that they really need to be changed, then if you have an accident and that's the cause of your accident, chances are you're not going to be covered either. So it's all about you're mitigating your risk. You're actually preventing, your risk by taking out insurance. But equally, the insurer is going to say, well, you've got to help us so that we can help you. And if you don't help us, chances are you're not going to be covered.
Karen, that's an interesting one. Can I just ask you about the tyre situation? Because, if I've got a current warrant of fitness, I would have thought I was covered because I don't know anything about bloody tyres. I'm not looking at my tyres. I've got a WAF.
Sure.
So shouldn't the warrant of fitness say that, I wouldn't have got it, would I? If they hadn't,
Well,
I think
and I
that's
think
a bit.
that's an interesting point, Leah, and it's one I think that we've actually had through our office where somebody got a WAF, but the WAF was coming to the end of its life, and so were the tyres, and the tyres were the cause of the accident. So if you know that you've travelled, hundreds of kilometres since your last WAF, and that, yes, the tyres were sort of borderline at that stage. You got the WAF, but, you knew that you had to change them sort of within a month or two, but you haven't bothered. That's the sort of situation we're talking about. It's not, well, I got a WAF last week and therefore, was it given to me under false pretenses or something like that? Or did they get it wrong? It's not like that. It's more about, 6 months later or, nearly at your 12-month point, you're sort of thinking, oh, well, I've just got this much and then I'll get the tyres fixed before the next WAF.
Interesting. I'm just thinking, Karen, because I'm sure there's people listening that would say, I'm not going to own up to my insurance company that I knew I had to change them. I mean, I'm just going to say I had a warrant of fitness and they said my tyres were fine. And I'm going to argue this.
I think, well, and people can argue it. I think, though, what a lot of consumers forget is that, insurers take their business very seriously. And if they get into a situation where they have to make inquiry before they pay out, particularly, when you're talking about a lot of money, maybe somebody has had an accident and they've not only got a total loss of their own vehicle, but they may have another vehicle that's a total loss, and the insurer is looking at a large payment, then it may be that they get an accident crash investigator on. They might get an investigator to look at it. They'll definitely go back and check your last WAF and see at that stage if the tyres were borderline, and therefore you should have known that they needed to be changed in the next little while. That type of thing. So the insurers generally are not there to catch people out. They're there to make sure that whatever risk is being presented is an accurate risk, and that's why it's so critical for consumers to know what their own risk is, basically, and protect against it.